24 hours and 22 draft picks later, the 2025 MLB Draft is in the books. We'll talk about what we liked about the Guardians draft, what we didn't like, and where these guys fit into the Guardians farm system rankings.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Guardians. It's another draft recap podcast, recapping day 2. And this is the only daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians where you can find daily coverage of the Guardians from the majors to the minors in the draft and everything in between. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we cover your team every single day. I'm Justin Lada. I was born a Cleveland Guardians fan. I have been covering their minor league system, providing prospect scouting reports and analysis since 2007. And I've been here with Jeff Ellis, my friend and co-host, since 2022, doing Locked On Guardians and lots of draft coverage since then.
Yeah, I mean, this wraps up my 13th straight draft. Yeah, it's a lot of time and commitment. I hope everyone enjoyed the coverage. I want to thank everyone who joined us. I'm Jeff Ellis, one of your two hosts here of Locked On Guardians. Before Locked On, I was a MLB draft and prospect analyst at Scout in 24/7, focused again on prospects in the draft. But the draft is always closest to my heart. It is a exhausting and typically a fun 24 hours. I think this was the least fun I've ever had covering a draft. So hopefully next year will be a little more entertaining.
Yeah, hopefully so. Appreciate everybody who is here making Locked On Guardians part of your daily routine. Thanks to our everydayers. Thanks to everybody who was with us on all our live shows, talking about the draft over 10 hours of coverage, I would say, total.
12.
2 days.
12
hours of live coverage. That doesn't include all Jeff's individual player profile shorts. Doesn't include the half-hour podcast we did on Monday, which you can go check out on day 1. This is day 2. All that fun stuff. We'll do more today. So today we'll talk about, again, overarching theme of this draft class for the Guardians, whether or not this is a bad class, if it's a new approach. We'll talk about where these guys fit into the Guardians prospect rankings for us. We'll talk about our least and favorite picks of the Guardians 2025 draft class. Jeff, before we get to all that, this episode of Locked On Guardians is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com. You're going to get 50% off your first year. All right, Guardians, this was a draft that was very different than years past. Obviously, we've kind of mentioned that ad nauseum. This is a off board for them in a lot of different ways this year.
Yeah.
Do you want to just start with your favorite day 2 picks? Do you want to add any other comments in first, or should we just get right into our favorite day 2 picks?
It was a weird day 2. I felt like there was not a whole lot of things. Like, this is the first time I can really recall where they had a ton of picks in this draft, but they only had 3 guys in the MLB top 100. That felt like a new low for them. Like, in spite of the fact that they had 3 picks in the top 100 or 5 picks in the top 100, they only had 3 guys that they took who were top 100 prospects. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how the money spending goes. That's one of the things that really stood out to me just overall is, as a class, they seem to kind of, like MLB had Lavalette about equal, Curley about equal, Walton much later, Hines much later, Schubart later, Hill was a higher one. But in that, like, there wasn't too much where I look at this draft, so I'm like, oh, they're going to have to. So I'm curious to see how the spending ends up. Favorite picks in round 2, like, God, this is going to be so negative and people are not going to be. I don't know if I had a quote unquote favorite pick this year. There was not a player that stood out. That was like a player I'm like, oh, I like that guy, or that's a fun sleeper, or they took a lot of traits. They took a lot of interesting approaches and players. But yeah, I don't know if I want to say I had necessarily a favorite of anyone who like really grabbed my attention on like years past. Anthony Martinez is a little bit fun, but there's a whole mess of risks in a first baseman. Luke Hill's interesting. Maybe it's him. Or Will Hines kind of started to warm to me more as they made other picks because of the lack of stuff. And
yeah,
but with Luke Hill, he has everything but exit velo.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything but exit velo, which is not ideal. You would like exit velo as well, but the nice thing when you have everything but exit velo is that there is a pathway to success that we've seen with Stephen Kwan. Now, no one is Stephen Kwan. He's a unicorn. But at this point, Stephen Kwan's so good. If you can even find a poor man's version of that, that's a pretty darn good player. So, I think you're trying to find a logical pathway through. So, I mean, I thought Luke Hill was a fun pick in the 4th round.
Yeah, I agree. I like Luke Hill a lot. Yeah, he doesn't hit the ball hard. He's not one of those guys that swings and misses in the zone, unlike Lavalette and Nolan Schubart. He doesn't expand the zone either. He expands the zone, a decent amount, but not. It's still in the green in terms of good data. The launch angle is a good thing here for Luke Hill. Like he gets the ball in the air. So if you're looking at somebody who can maybe tap into the little power they have, and like he's like a 12 to 15 home run guy. The only question I have for Luke Hill is like where he's going to play defensively, and that's kind of the concern.
They announced him as the 3rd baseman. I think that's because he has a good arm, but I think he could play, second without a problem.
Gotcha. The other pick I will say, there wasn't like a ton of like standout guys where I was like, yes, love that guy, do that. But I mean, you mentioned Anthony Martinez. I will say Vanderbilt first baseman Riley Nelson. After we got some additional like scouting notes from Arya Gerson, who covers Vanderbilt for I think it's the Tennessean. Is that who she writes for?
I'm not sure, but she's great either way.
She's fantastic. She talked about how he's a guy who does put up good exit velocities, but just doesn't hit the ball in the air that much, doesn't sell out for power. So they're probably going to have to look at his stance a little bit. It's a bit of a weird stance. They're going to have to iron that out if they want him to hit for power. Like I could see that because he's 6'3". You hope he's going to hit for power. I think he's going to have the ability to hit for more power than Anthony Martinez. Like it's just, again, I know you asked the question to Paul Gillespie after day 2 of the draft about taking 2 first basemen. And it was like, well, yeah, you could take 2 guys. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't know who's going to be on the board. You just take whoever. And it was a weird answer, but
it was. Martinez actually had very poor exit velocities as a sophomore. Yeah. So that's,
he's in a much worse conference than Riley Nelson, which is why I like Nelson a lot more.
Yeah. And I know I just said positive things about him, now going that way. And talking with Taylor about him, Taylor basically said he would make Jonathan Rodriguez look like a burner. Like that it's legit 20 grade speed with Martinez at first in terms of
I don't think Nelson's a great athlete either. Like they're both stuck at first base, and Schubart's going to be eventually a first baseman DH. Like they're going to play him in the outfield.
So they drafted 3 first basemen, which is weird.
Very weird. And I will say this, like you and I both really liked Ryan Prager a year ago. It was not a good season for him in 2025, but if there's one thing we can trust about this team, I'm not saying this guarantees they're going to fix him, but if there's one area we can look at where the Guardians have had success, it's with guys like Ryan Prager. So I'm interested to see what they can do with Ryan Prager when he gets in here. They didn't talk much about in terms of like things he didn't do versus this year or last year. They were pretty nondescript in their answer about what they thought about him. Yeah, it was like.
Can I give you a tinfoil conspiracy?
Absolutely, please.
You want my tinfoil conspiracy? So a year ago, he got taken by the A's and Angels, then decided, or the Angels. Angels. Yeah, I got taken by the Angels and was like, I'm going back to school. Angels not exactly known for their pitcher development. It's like, oh, okay. So then this year he managed to get himself set to go to Cleveland, known for pitcher development. There's a part of me it's like, did he just go back to school because he got a combination of NIL money and didn't want to go to a team that's known for ruining pitchers, or did and then maybe he agreed, like a guy like him, maybe they got him for slightly less than he told other teams just because he wanted to go to a good developmental home.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he did have like I don't think it was first round. Maybe there was some first round buzz in 2024 on him.
Comp round.
First round. Yeah.
Comp round.
So if they can get him back to that version, which again, those are one of the things you can look at track record wise for Cleveland that they do well. So I'm interested in Ryan Prager too. I'm not down on that pick at all. He was one of my favorite picks last year, and I'm curious to see it. And Anthony Silva can play the heck out of a shortstop. Everybody loved him a year ago offensively. There's just nothing in that bat in terms of pop. I will say this, Jeff. There's 2 80 grade things they did get in this draft. We'll talk about those next. We'll talk about our least favorite picks. And we'll talk about where these guys slot into our prospect rankings heading into the rest of this season. Boy, I know I always check my bank account and I'm like, where did my money go? Don't you wish that managing your money was a lot easier? With Monarch Money, it can be. So if you're looking to grow your savings, maybe you're planning for a big purchase, it is summer, maybe you want to go on that vacation, maybe you are realizing you wanted to go on vacation, you didn't. You can start planning for that because Monarch Money is going to put you in the driver's seat. It is like having your own personal CFO. It gives you full visibility and control of your finances. And it's more than just a budgeting app. It is a total, complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, all your investments, and spending in one single place. No more juggling all these crazy apps. No more checking your bank app, checking this app, checking that app to manage your money. You're all going to be able to build wealth and start saving your money towards things you want to save it for. I know I've got lots of streaming accounts out there. I know I've got subscriptions to 1,000,001 things. Monarch Money helps me identify that. It helps me knock out a couple of those ones I'm not using, the ones that have gone up in price that I haven't noticed, because all these apps are charging more money, and sometimes you don't notice when the price goes up. So Monarch Money uncovers those things for you. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's Monarch Money, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Appreciate y'all making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. Make sure you are auto-downloading on audio no matter where you get your podcast, because that will make sure that you're getting the podcast into your feed. It helps us out, helps you not miss an episode. Hit the bell on YouTube to be notified when we go live, like we did during the draft for 3 different times. Also, when Jeff does like videos like player profiles, and we do things like bonus episodes or reaction videos to news or after the game or the MLB Squad Show. All that stuff comes to your YouTube feed through Locked On Guardians. Get all that. Jeff, 280 grade things that the Guardians got in this draft. What do you think they are?
Let's see. They got 80 grade. Like, let me look at the tracker here. They got 80 grade first name and Cannon Peoples for a catcher. Pebbles.
That is a good one. It's Thomas Cannon Peoples from day 2.
Peoples.
No, the two. I didn't realize Cannon Peoples was a switch hitter, by the way. No, they got. I mean, Jace Lavalette, Lord Tubington is his nickname.
They took no left-handed catchers after your whole thing about how all catchers are left-handed.
Okay. Oh, okay. He's a switch hitter. Okay, listen. No, Jace Lavalette's nickname is Lord Tubington, and the nickname for who's the Oklahoma State kid they drafted, the pitcher,
Dirty Harry. For
Dirty Harry,
Harrison
Dorf. Yes. They got 280 grade nicknames, Jeff. That's you can't put a I can't even grade that. You can't put a
and let's be honest,
quantify that.
Von Necker sounds like a old Western villain right there. You got him and Zane Petty definitely would team up to try to take down Dirty Harry. That's a combination.
Yeah, that was their 80 grades. All right, let's talk about the things we didn't like from day 2 and just in general. They didn't take any left-handed catchers, so I look like an idiot again because I was an idiot this whole weekend. I don't know. The weird thing to me is they went against, and maybe these guys weren't available. Like I wrote some of them up and I thought they were available, but like the one thing they have historically done well with, Jeff, we know, is the pitcher types where it's like, okay, K rates above 10 K per 9 and 3 or 2 below K per 9. And they take those guys and they turn them into guys who throw a little bit harder. They add some pitches. Maybe they felt like those archetypes weren't here and they couldn't do that. But they really changed their approach with pitching. Like they went to Nelson Kijo, who, has some good stuff, but has control issues. Bounced out of the Oregon State rotation this year back into the bullpen because he struggled so much. They took a couple of those control guys that missed some bats, but I don't know, it's an up and down approach. Like it was not their usual approach to pitching. And that's the one thing they've done well historically. And every draft class is different. So maybe they had to change based on who was available and who fit their approach. But it felt like they, I understand, like I may not have liked going against the approach for hitters this year, the way they have in the past. I'm not saying what they've done in the past has worked out. So I'm not against that change in approach. Even though I don't like them, I understand the need to change the approach. But with the pitching side of things, did they really need to change it? Like, that's my only question. Like, how much do they need to change their pitching draft and development process?
I also thought it was interesting that, like, after the past few years, that they went hyper, college. They didn't till the last 2 picks. They'd only taken 1 high school player in the first
it was just Hines,
20 selections. And, this is last year we talked about like, oh, the depth is prep pitching, and they leaned into that. And in recent years, they've leaned into the depth of the class. This year's depth and they've avoided whatever's weak. Like they've gone away from areas where like, yeah, this isn't. This year, instead, they leaned into the weak part of the class by taking 7 out of their first 12 picks were college hitters. 7 of the first 12 were the weakest thing in the draft.
Yeah.
And the depth of was college pitching, and they took 4 college pitchers. They took no prep hitters in the entire class, not 1 high school hitter. So I thought that was a little weird. It was just the fact that, and then it was, they took players that had, listen, every guy's going to have like, varying degrees of red flags, but every single player had a pretty massive thing wrong in their profile. Like, Lavalette and Curley and Hines and Schubart all missing the zone a ton. Aaron Walton doesn't have good EVs, and he played in an exit, and he's built strongly, and he's in an environment that should have exit velocity. He didn't have that. Luke Hill does not have exit velocity, some of the lowest in the class, right? I mean, him and Walton are similar. Martinez got worse every single year in college, and can only play, is not athletic, and his EVs the year before were as bad as Hill and Walton's. And then you got Nelson, who hit 0 home runs last year in the draft league, hit 2 he hit 8 this year at Vandy. But you're talking about, you're going to have to completely revamp his swing. Like almost every single guy they drafted is they leaned into the weakest part of the draft and then took 7 guys outside of Hill. Hill is what he is. Okay. You're hoping that it's going to be high on base and lots of doubles, but everyone else, you're going to have to completely remap their swings. Like you're talking about, you invested 6 guys where you're going, we got to change their swing. We have to go through and change how they go about things. So that's and that's not easy to do. Let's be very honest. It's hard. So that kind of stood out to me, that they leaned into the hardest part of the weakest part of the class and did that. And then, normally on day 3, it's a little more fun. It's a little more, or day 3, the day 3 grouping of 10 to 20. It was a pretty, like, you and I were just looking at these guys on day 3, like, oh, that's interesting. That's like, but it wasn't anyone where you're like, oh, I can dream on this, or I can see a pathway. It was, because that's the other thing. I mean, like every single one of their pitchers, I'm like, yeah, he's probably a reliever. Yeah, he's probably a reliever. I think every single pitcher they drafted is likely a reliever. Like there's not anyone where I looked back, at least from the college guys, and thought they have a good chance to start. Every single one, I'm like, no, the high likelihood is reliever here.
I mean, Anthony Silva is like a future Will Wilson, except he can play shortstop really
well.
A
much better defense. Much better defense.
Yeah, but I mean, offensively, he's like a future Will Wilson.
I mean, he was below league average in college. You're counting on a guy who couldn't hit in college, where everyone
and Will
hits.
Wilson was a first round pick. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and on the pitching side of things too, like I was just talking about too, everybody they took, like you said, is probably a reliever. Like they have a lot of weird release points. They kind of went back to their old model. I'll talk more about.
And they went for a lot of command guys, and they still have not been good at fixing command guys. Like they went for a lot of guys who have some command issues, and that's still not. Yes, that's not what they do.
That's not something they've done well. Yeah. So I mean, this is a total change in approach, and they are the pitching factory for a reason. Again, that's why I keep saying, like, maybe the guys they like just weren't there. I thought they were because I wrote some of them up, but I'm not going to sit here and act like just because I wrote them up because they had certain data points and video that I liked. Because here's the thing with video on Twitter in terms of prospects and draft picks in general. Everybody posts the highlights. Nobody is running to Twitter or any social media app to tweet, look at this guy. He strikes out everywhere in the zone. He can't throw strikes. No, what you're seeing out there is guys who throw strikes, guys who are hitting bombs. Like social media is a highlight reel. It's not a real life reel. Okay. Like when John Kenton Noel strikes out on a pitch, 20 inches outside off the plate, who's posting it? Nobody's posting it unless it's the pitcher. Yeah. Pitching Ninja is posting it on Twitter, but he's not posting it because of Noel. He's posting because of the pitcher. So you're seeing the best. Nobody's putting their worst work out there. They just happen to be in the spotlight when somebody else is doing their best work. So that's what you're seeing with all this stuff. And yeah, it's just, you could buy into all that stuff, and everybody has issues. All right, let's talk about where these guys fit into our prospect rankings. And I want to mention a couple more things about this overall class. Got some questions for Jeff to answer, and we'll kind of debate a couple of these things about the state of this 2025 draft class now that it's all said and done. More draft coverage to come here on Locked On Guardians.
But first, let's talk about our good friends over at Supply House. You can tell I'm recording from a basement. I have had all sorts of work on this basement. You go and look at the early videos. You can look at no shelves, no paint. Over there is the HVAC that sometimes makes some noise that decides to randomly, it doesn't want to work on either the hottest or coldest days of the year. And you know what happens? And when that happens is I go and I get an expert. And you know who the experts go to? Supply House. They get the supplies they need made for skilled traders. Supply House. Whether you're in a plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. If you need help with an order, they got experts to help you. Trade pros get an edge. They have their free Trade Master program. Again, free, offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Again, it's great for skilled traders, but it's also great for everyone. So join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com.
All right. One thing I want to ask you too, real quick too. Let's start with the prospect rankings. We did this a little bit on our live show during day 2 of the draft. We talked about whether or not where these guys fit, and I went all the way back to some of my previous rankings. This is the first time in a while where none of these guys for me are going to go into the top 10. And generally, when you're picking, I don't want to always say that's the case. But your first round pick probably should be a top 10 guy in your organization, right? Like that's generally how it should be.
Yep.
Like let's just go down the list. So here's my list for this year, starting off 2025. My top 10 is this: Bazzana, Hanau, Churio, DeLauder, Doughty, Engel, Cantillo, who's probably nearing his expiration in terms of prospect status, Velasquez, Walters, and Kafis. Just starting off with Jace Lavalette, not going over Bazzana. He's not going over Hanau. Even though I want to move Churio down, I'm not putting him above Churio. I'm not putting him above DeLauder. I'm not putting him above Doughty. I'm not putting him above Engel. Even if I take Cantillo out due to prospect graduation, I'm not putting him above Ralphie Velasquez. I'm probably going to move Walters down because of the injury. I'm going to move Kafis up because he's having a good year, even if there are some red flags. I'm going to move Messick up, who's number 12. Like, there's at least 9-10 guys that in front of you I can sit there and say, I can't put Jace Lavalette in front of those guys. I just can't. That's so bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of doing a quick little update here as you were talking because I never formalized mine. So it's like as I'm going through, it's like Bazzana and Janau stay at the top because of positional value and just pure
and
upside.
They're just good.
Yeah, DeLauder, it's like he's so good when he's healthy. Like I have less concerns than I had before. It's just the dang health. Engel at 4 to me has been a real breakout with everything he's done as a complete hitter. Doughty 5. Kafis at 6, Messick 7 because he's just been solid. Because here's the thing, you might look at Messick and be like, oh, it's not been as good of a year as I expected. But you got to remember, again, he's transitioning to that new baseball. It's slick. There's other things that make that a harder thing and where he's pitching. So I have him there at 8. No, I have him at, gosh, now I'm having a hard time reading across the line. He's 7. Ralphie has to be at 8. And then I would have Brito at 9 because he's right on the step and I believe in him. And then, we can start talking at around the 10 range. Because I had Cantillo and Peterson, the 2 guys that are out with. But honestly, at this point, I would put Hartle higher with liking what I've seen. Like I'm tempted to have Hartle at 10, Peterson 11. And from there, then I would start considering some of the other players. I'd have to look. But honestly, I mean, I'm very tempted to move up Rosario first. I think Rosario I like better. So it's like,
I agree. I got to move Rosario way up my board too. Yeah.
It's like I'm almost tempted at this point with some of the improvement, like to have Rosario be my 10, which would then have like Peterson at 11 and 12 or 11. Yeah, Peterson 11, 12 Hartle. And then, that's when we get in the range where I would start considering, maybe 13 for Messick and then a few other guys. And then maybe after that, I would have I think Messick and Curley both make the top 20, but I think those are the only 2 that would make my top 20.
Yeah, Curley for sure and Lavalette top 20. Schubart for me is out of the top 20.
He's probably close to 30 for me.
Yeah, Will Hines is going to be somewhere like I have Cam Sullivan 29 and Petey Halpin 30. I probably can put somewhere. I could put Will Hines somewhere in that range. Like I'm going to move Valera down. I had him at 23. I had Tugboat at 22, and he's had a very up and down year, so I'm moving him down. Luis Morejo Jr. has one of the guys you and I really like coming into the year.
Yeah.
He struggled. I had Kennedy 19. Kennedy's really struggled. I had Cody Huff 20 because I really bought into the exit velocities and
I mean, I did too. I
defensive
had him
skills.
about
He's
there.
been poor. So yeah, I mean, everybody here, everybody they took,
and then
yeah,
Walters. Both of us had Walters pretty high, and then it's just health. Like already got, he's a
yeah, it's
reliever,
just
and there's already the
unfortunate.
risk.
Yeah, so that stinks. And I put him as a low risk. So everybody in this class is like a high risk. Like there's some reason to fail. Like yeah, the only guys in the top 30 for me are going to be Lavalette, Schubart, Hines, and Curly. Like there's nobody else. I might. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird set of rankings, like where they put these guys are going to fall into. Like if I did a top 50, like I don't even know where Walton fits in because there's just not enough. Like
there's not enough
to
know.
Like he could play center field. He's got speed and athleticism, and
he's
has
built
the
well.
Yeah. He has the physicality to be a power hitter, but he just hasn't been.
You know who the two guys we haven't and then there's the three guys you didn't mention at all that we also have to talk about. It's like Cozart bad year, Oki hasn't done much, and then Welvin Francisco hasn't really grabbed the bull by the horns for as much as everyone like him.
I had Welvin Francisco 16, and I'm gonna move him down because he was
17 on mine. Like right now, it's looking like I'm just kind of going through Sabrowski. I had my top 30. I think he's probably graduated now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had Nick Casey in there.
No,
I don't think he's going to stay in there.
Yeah. Those guys it depends on your definition. If you're just going by rookie eligibility, those guys still have a little bit longer.
I think when it's all said and done, like Schubart here's the thing, and people are like, but you hate him. You say he has no chance. He has interesting tools. Maybe he'll be the exception to the rule. Maybe this is the unicorn I'm looking for. Maybe he is the example, either one of them, of the guy who works out. But at this point in time, it's like, I mean, there's also my issue with Hartle specifically, where you took him, is there isn't an example of him being successful. But like at the same time,
you said Hartle. Who'd you mean?
I mean Lavalette. But like,
okay,
I can also admit there are fun tools there. There's power. There's interesting things. And when you're looking at the board, it's like after I get through like Peterson and Hartle, well, I'll put him ahead of Walters because Walters is a reliever, a surgeon. I'm going to put him ahead of Oki because Oki has not looked good this year. It's like a lot of last year's picks. You and I weren't in on Cozart. Schlesinger's been okay, but he hasn't. And all those high school kids. Like, I'm probably going to put Chase Mobley in the top 20, even though he hasn't he's just out some complex somewhere. It's been
pretty rough for him.
It's like, and I wonder too, is maybe that's why they're they after last year they drafted some high school kids and they traded them all away. And then last year they took a bunch of high school arms and most of them are not looking good right now. So maybe they got some buyer's remorse.
No. The other thing I'll say, like, I want to kind of get finish off on this note too, is I think it's both. The question we're posing is this a new approach for Cleveland? Is it a bad class? And I think it's both. I think it's they have shifted their approach a little bit because they did dig into a couple more guys that they normally haven't, in terms of Lavalette and Curly and Schubart and who's that one I'm thinking of? Walton. Like I guess he's similar, except the fact that his exit velocities don't match Lavalette and Schubart. And they took guys with exit velocities like Riley Nelson who are good but haven't hit for power. Like I know some people were like, "Oh, could these guys be CJ Kafis?" And I'm like, "Not really." Like Kafis actually had, he didn't have a ton of power in college, but he had better power numbers than this.
He had better power numbers, and he was,
he had decent numbers on the Cape too. Like, and the Guardians got away from Cape Cod stuff too, which I thought was interesting. They pretty much ignored the Cape, and if they did, it was like, well, if they play, it's like, okay, who cares if they sucked on the Cape, because that's unusual for them too. I think this was just a terrible draft class. I'll adjust next year to my thinking about who might be a Guardians type player based on this, but I'm still going to consider the old type because it depends on the class. I think last year the Guardians leaned heavily into prep pitching, like you said, because they had the money. That was the strength of the class. And like you said, they did kind of go away from the strength of the class this year. But maybe they just felt like this is a very bad class. And I think this is one of the worst classes. I haven't been following the draft as long as you have, at least not, getting elbow deep into it. But since I've been doing it, I think 2020 was really the first time where I really paid attention just because there was no baseball going on. And it was all I could get into. And since then, I've been digging deeper and deeper.
And
this is the worst class since 2020 for me.
And maybe I'm having. Oh, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
I'm wondering, because when you talk about that, what hits me is like, it's that level of like, well, am I having some, I don't know if I want to say flashbacks, am I having some memory burn and some natural negativity? Because honestly, this is the worst top of a draft since 2013, the Clint Frazier draft, where they had that high pick. And, most of the mocks that year, I did get that pick right. But most mocks I'm taking Colin Moran. Remember him? First baseman, third baseman, bounced around for a bit.
Either, yeah.
Yeah, but Trey Ball was the pick like right after them, and he never even got the AA, I don't think. And you had Cole Stewart, who went before them, and it was just a weird draft year. And if you want to look for a guy who has some of those issues we've seen with Lavalette, there's some stuff in there that Clint Frazier had at the time, who was the player they took in terms of being a good but not great athlete. Guy who had played in center, could play in the corner, who would sometimes, he did both. He chased as well as miss in the zone, but just would sometimes be a little bit too passive in the zone. So maybe I'm having those flashbacks there with this. But yeah, I think 2013 is really the draft. And you know what? You have to find your value where you can, because that 2013 draft, I believe, was the Aaron Judge draft, was it not? And it was the JP Crawford later on draft. So there's always value. It's just up to teams to identify where that value is and benefit from it.
But Jeff, Jace Lavalette is Aaron Judge, remember? No, I'm not. I don't want to stir that up. Oh, I want to note one more thing too. It sounds like Junior Betances is now the Guardians' assistant hitting coach. He's taking over for Jason Esposito, who left for Vanderbilt recently. So there is that. I don't know if it's an interim tag for Betances or if it's a permanent thing. But there have been, some prospects who have done better under him in terms of like improvements. I don't know if they necessarily worked out at the major league level. Like he's been credited with like Oscar Gonzalez and Gabriel Arias and Brian Rocchio recently, at least changing some things. But the players do like him, and there have been some things he's helped turn around, at least at AAA, and we'll see if it pans out at the majors. But he is taking over there. I know he did throw Jose Ramirez's batting practice the 1 year at the Home Run Derby, so Jose also likes him. All right, Jeff and I are going to take a well-deserved day off on Wednesday because there's no draft. Enjoy the All-Star game. You could go back and watch any of our lives from day 1 and day 2 of the draft. You can go back and listen to the day 1 recap of the draft. You can listen to this. You can go listen to my recap of the weekend series against the White Sox from Monday's show. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll look ahead to the second half. So we'll be back with you. Enjoy a little bit of break, and from our voices, we'll rest ours. We'll come back and we'll talk more Guardians all the time. Make sure you check out the Locked On MLB Squad show coming up here soon, too.
Yeah, we'll have more data on these draft picks coming. And I did want to make a note because we mentioned yesterday, it does sound like Jace Lavalette is someone we will not see play this year. So don't set your schedules trying to hope to see him. There's a wrist injury, and it only affected like his last 2 weeks of the season, maybe last week. So
not even. It was like a week, if that. Yeah, it was a weekend.
Yeah. So and then Evan Kress, their other pick, had a forearm issue, but then had a sling, which often is more of a Tommy John thing. So we'll see. College doesn't always report correct injuries. So 2 guys injured from this class. The Guardians love those injured guys. That is one thing that's constant. Look for who's injured, and the Guardians will draft you. Thank you all for joining us, and go Guardians, go.